Hello, my name's Louie. How you going? Here's a little menu for, this is just, you write the first slide of just like what I'm actually talking about. But I also like to share it because it gives you an idea of what I'm actually talking about. My name's Louie, Louie Roots. I ran a studio, I ran a bar, and now I'm currently co-directing Freeplay, but we'll get to all that. Basically, I'm talking about, maybe it's not so technical, but it should be. It's how you, as a technical person or a studio or a collection or whoever, engage with the community around you and kind of why. I feel like it's fine because we're all at a community event, so we're all kind of on board anyway. But let's roll. So I'm going to give a bit of like my experience, and that'll hopefully frame the second part, which is all about how you sort of do it yourself. My first job was over in Denmark. I worked for a company called Kilo, and it was really fun. It was a nice place to be for a couple of years. This is the boss. This is and his brother over there with the leather jacket. And this is Friday nights. It was really it was in Aarhus in where was it? Denmark. Yeah. Which is sort of the second biggest. It's not Copenhagen, so no one knows about it. And it's a student town, really. There's lots of universities, so very multicultural. Our studio had a lot of different people from all over Europe, and on Friday nights, or Friday afternoons, once or twice Friday mornings, but usually after like lunchtime on Friday, it would start to bring out a carton, and then we'd sort of sit around the office and have a Friday bar, it was called. It was a drinking culture. I was kind of prepared. And and that stuff there is Gaul, the bottle. It used to be a company that made throat stuff. It tastes like that. Horrible stuff. Very Danish. But yeah, it was great. And this is, again, my first studio job, so I didn't know anything else. And we would hang out there and drink and go out into the town and party and stuff. It wasn't until I got back to Australia and I was talking to people about living and working in games in Denmark, and they were telling, oh, do you know this person, this person, this person? And I was saying, unless they worked at Kilo with me, no, because we didn't have any kind of broader community. Occasionally, some partners would come in on Friday nights, but it was really just kind of insular. It was also around the same time, like this first game I worked on was Subway Surfers, which went pretty well, and but I was also working on Frisbee Forever 2, which I was very excited about, but didn't go as well. But as the company sort of grew, they're sort of, instead of accepting more community in and being a bigger presence in the game scene in Denmark, they kind of just got arrogant. And it was, by the time I left, it wasn't the best. It was a very insular culture in that particular company. Again, lovely people and, very welcoming when you get in there. It's actually a very Danish thing, apparently. But yeah, from the outside, kind of a bit icy. So I came back to Perth, and opened SK Games with some people that I had met and some people I went to uni with back in the day, and Sophie, my oldest friend from high school, and we were making games for public spaces. This idea was to make short form games, put them in festivals and pubs and different sort of physical, tangible spaces. Make little cabinets for them and stuff. It was an experiment. I wouldn't suggest trying it again. If you feel like trying it, talk to me and I'll dissuade you. But it was fun. It was very fun. And as we're sort of making this stuff, we would have these launch parties. So I didn't put any. Wait. Is this slide formatted totally wrong? I need my notes. That's all right. Anyway, there's some stuff beneath it, but that's fine. Don't worry about it. It's all up here. Yeah. Saturday Games Week, here we go. How hard could it be? We did launch parties. So our games were like, because again, they were made for public spaces, they weren't, we didn't put them out on Steam sort of thing. So our launch parties also kind of double as playtesting parties. And we'd sort of have them in their backyard because we had a little studio, because it's a lot easier to do that in Perth, especially back in 2013. So we'd have these little house parties and we'd put these games on, and sometimes they'd break or whatever, but it was fun. And we started doing this by just inviting our friends. It was very much just like, rather than, there was a really good scene, and there still is a really good scene in Perth. There's wonderful people in games in Perth. But there's also, as people who live in Perth, like we know people from everywhere. And we really wanted to invite artists, musicians, just people who we knew, FIFO workers, lots of FIFO workers. So rather than feeling like a networking or industry party, we really just sort of phrased it as, let's invite our friends around for a drink. It was also kind of coupled with the fact that, there were launch parties, but we hadn't properly play tested, so we didn't really want to invite, press or games people, because what if they were shit? What if our games broke and never worked? But it really, it helped us. It helped us not just like play the games and everything, but it helped us sort of set the tone for like where our games should be, because they were meant to be placed at, music festivals or fringe festivals, things like that, where anyone could walk past. So it really wasn't about being, it wasn't a PAX kind of thing. We did show them at PAX once, and that was not a great idea, because our games were very lo-fi, very low-tech, and just approachable in a way that PAX is not, which we all kind of understand. It's the bad part of gamer that we kind of like, anywho. So we kept sort of pushing this idea of like, we'd sort of make our own shows at pubs. We'd play, we'd invite bands to come play either at the office, or we'd go set up a gig at a local pub. It helped as well because we're all Perth people. We all had connections, and yeah, we just sort of fill it with people that we knew in our lives that did cool stuff. This is at the bakery back in Perth, which went away in 2015. Yeah, it was a good venue. It was basically when Fringe finished, they left all their crap there, and someone just made a venue out of it. And it was great until it sort of was never going to work. But this is showing Nidhogg. We also kind of opened up to other games that were being made, because developers would come as well, because the scene was very small. So there's a games party, so developers would rock up as well, and we'd all have, we'd all introduce each other and have drinks together and have a good time. And then the next time they'd bring their games, and they'd be working on other things. So I'd also be talking to people from around the world or whatever, and so that's a cool game, and then I'd show that. We just sort of made it a little, a collage of whatever was happening at the time and whatever we were interested in. And yeah, this is Nidhogg, which I don't know if you remember, but we showed this one at the bakery. We had bands playing. That's I think at least two of those guys were from the main band that were playing Rag and Bone. And it was a really good way to just like cross-pollinate. I don't like that word, but it's useful right now. So fast forward through the bar, because there was lots of other parties as well, like coming over to Melbourne, but a lot of that sort of lent more in towards more developers for developers kind of thing. But when I kind of get through the other side of now, we've got like co-direct Freeplay at the moment, and it's a strange sort of scene at the moment for communities, because there's sort of fractured discords around, but and most people have gone to Blue Sky, but a lot of people didn't make that transition. There's not really any good space online where people keep up with each other consistently. A lot of the places that we consume content is not actually content that tells us anything useful about our friends and what's going on in our community. It is just short form videos that you watch repeatedly until you fall asleep. Anyway. So it's a weird space, like digitally, So we kind of have to come back to physical spaces and sort of reapproach how we sort of all gather again, and how we do that same thing of setting a tone and breaking down boundaries and bringing more people in, making it approachable, accessible. New spaces. That's a big thing as well. Like, it's something coming from Freeplay, just doing it in different venues, trying different things, experimenting again, really, has been very good. So, because I've how far in am I? I have no idea what time it is.
Halfway.
Sick. All right, I'm about right, I think. So here's why we do this sort of now. And it's as true as it was back then, but I think it's kind of more relevant right now. We do it to find more people, basically, is the main thing. We do it because studios and teams, and you might be working a really good game, you're still a human being. If you're an arsehole online, it's harder to get funding. Not directly, not as in like, it's not a stipulation on any kind of extreme thing, but like, what you do has ramifications in the world you live in. I know it's weird, but like, that's how we roll, and this idea of, and there's, like, separate the art from the artist, that matters for like Notch or whatever, if you care. But when it comes down to like the people in our communities that are actually trying to get stuff done on day to day, like, there's a lot of people doing stuff and a lot of, a lot of games that are great. But if the person who is making that game is never present, never talks to people, like, you can do what you want. You can be insular, you can be a hermit, that's fine. But no one knows about your game, and it's harder for it to get out there. You're picking a hard choice, sort of thing. None of this stuff matters. If the point here of like people who make games don't prioritize money, I know, that was the one my wife was like, I don't know about that one. But then there's different levels of this stuff, and the key of it is that we're all here because we're passionate about games, and a lot of people, especially in this room, have very good technical skills that could make them more money in other fields, and you'd be less likely to be randomly laid off, and less at the whim of the pandemic and stuff like that. Games is not necessarily chosen for cash, especially in WA. So it's about sort of understanding that your personality, the vibe you have, and your understanding of other people and your place in the community is very important for your project going forward. There's this thing about like sort of meeting people as well. There's a lot of people who are doing great work in the industry right now who are total freelancers, just jump from project to project wherever they find work. And the good ones as well have other offers. And there's a lot of people in this industry who are passion driven again, that will go towards projects that they feel more passionate about. And if they don't like the people behind the scenes, or they don't know the people behind the scenes, they're more likely to go with someone else that they know and trust. Projects change, lots of things happen in this industry, which we know. So feeling like you have this kind of like sense of ease with the people you work with is huge right now. So, all right, I didn't have a slide in between these. So I flipped to the other side, which is doing it yourself, and how to kind of like start thinking of like, oh, this sounds great. I'd love to know more people and do more stuff and show everyone how, understanding I am as a human being and empathetic and all those kind of things that a good host has. But how do I go about it? There's this, you start with your constraints, basically. You start with what you have, what you can provide. For me, it was, I had a backyard, and we were like a block away from a Dan Murphy's. So there was this, things work. But again, this is back in when was this? Like a long time ago. So the industry is very different now, and then it's a lot less drinking, look, in my life, there's a lot less drinking. There's, like it starts with the constraints you have in terms of physical stuff, but then there's people as well, which is, I think it's the next slide anyway. So the one thing I'll just you start with the people you have as well, and you sort of say, what do we want? What do we feel comfortable doing? How do we host? Do we bring people into the studio? Do we want people to play our games at our desks? Do we want to take our laptops to the park? Do we want to call a pub and book the room and just, have a sort of IGDA sort of style? Or do we want what kind of vibe do we want? How do we all feel most comfortable? Because along those lines of what you as a team or a collective or a group, or even a solo dev, and again, solo devs have connections, friends, people that help them help it happen. So along that line of what you have, what you want, that's usually along the same lines of what you have. If you find yourself going to the pub a lot, chances are you know a good pub. If you find yourself going to the park a lot, chances are you know a good park. So it starts with your sort of resources to be constrained into the creativity part of that, of all right, well, we have to be at the park. How are we going to get power there? There you go, creativity, here you go. Can you get your laptop to run off a car battery? Technically, yes, most of them do that. But is it safe? So it goes into this kind of tangible resources. I think I got these slides back to front, doesn't matter. And it comes into that thing of what people can bring, and the last point on the previous slide, which is letting people help you. And this is hard for me personally, or it was. No, it still is. It definitely still is. But accepting help from your community is not just about saying yeah, show up, because other things exist in people's lives. But if you start saying actually, I need a hand setting up. I need a hand, can I borrow your AV equipment? Can I borrow this? Can we borrow that? Or what have you got? Letting people come into the whole thing as from an ideological side. They're well, this is great, but what if we had it, I don't know, themed around sherbet or something? Maybe sherbet's their dog. I don't know. But letting people come into the actual concept and not being precious about it, which again, as someone who runs events, is very hard for me. No, you stay away. But it helps, because if you don't open up, if you don't let your community help you, then they don't get stronger at helping you and better at helping you. And the better they get at helping you, the more that they are there. And when they're there, they feel like they should be there and that they helped and that it's their thing as well. And again, it's not about saying this is great because then the funding people will come and I'll get money. It's just about saying you just want your friends to come and help you build a cool thing and set a cool vibe. And then stuff happens. It may not be, Mr. Sony that rocks up, but it might be someone who just, caught up with them the other week. Or it might be someone who has a random connection to a film publisher who is now going into gaming. It might be anyone. You don't know, and you can't choose. You have to kind of just put it out there and let the universe deliver you someone. Because if they come to your event and it's a really nice event and they stay, chances are they're a nice person, which is good, bodes well. This slide is poorly worded, but don't know. It's basically just saying just put yourself out there, be vulnerable. There's a lot of times in the sort of events community, and there was a bigger sort of emphasis on this, especially pre-COVID. But there was a lot of worry about how do we make sure that spaces are safe and people are comfortable and all this stuff. And the solution is just to be reliable, more than to be pragmatic. You can put up an amazing set of guidelines, but whoever comes to your event, you don't know if they've even read them. It helps, of course, to have this stuff in mind, but it's more the best thing you can do is just be more well, we're going to do this. I'd rather spend the time to do this every 2 months than have to worry about all this kind of stuff and do it once a year. Because the more you can kind of have a casual meetup in the park, or catch up with friends after work, or bring your game to a meetup or something like that, the more that you're around and you're consistently presenting a respectful sort of back and forth with your community, then the more of the community that comes to you will understand how you play ball, and they will also play ball when they come into your space. And reliability is a huge thing, not from just, it's one side to like take money from people to come to an event, then you have like this obligation. But just having a party, having a little thing, having a housewarming, like having reliable or like, semi-reliable events where people know that, oh yeah, if I keep up with this person's Instagram or this studio's mailing list, I get notified of these cool events that I like going to because there's nice people and a good vibe. And that just builds itself. You would lead by example and hopefully set a good example. And invite anyone, you just open it up. Don't think about, like, there's no element of cool, it's your space. And the more that you put your space, like yourself into your events and your like outreach, the more that you're vulnerable and you just try to be like, I'm just trying to have fun, and like, who wants to come and hang out and play my new game, or like give me some feedback, or even just come and chat, design stuff, listen to our pitch or something, like whatever you have going on in the studio at the moment or in your team. The more that you're just like genuine and open with that, then the more you find a different variety of people come along and want to help out. The more you think of it as like a networking event that has to be good with the right people and lots of air quotes, the harder it is, and the worse the vibe. And then, obviously, as a consequence of that, the less it works in your kind of intended way. This is my parents, by the way, playing one of my games. And I thought, it's a thing that I still hold. I took a lot of my hosting from them growing up. But it's a thing I still hold of, like, would my parents play this? Would they understand how to play this? Would they feel welcome here? And again, it matters if you are making games for public spaces, but just in general, making a space for people, would every kind of person be welcome here? There was a huge community at Bar SK that a very diverse community that called it home, and I never we probably had rainbows around and stuff, but like I never went and hung a pride flag up or anything. Like I just treated everyone as people who came in, and everyone deserves respect, and they found their community there. We did events for them for different communities, depending on what they wanted to do. You sort of react to who comes to you, but being welcoming and safe is not about picking an identity or picking a side or anything like that. It's just empathy. Once you sort of feel like, hey, we do this on a regular thing, then it starts becoming like, how do we share this? Again, it's that thing about like empowering the people that come to you, which I think is giving away the next slide. But it's saying like, what could make this better is like, sometimes it's like putting your personal stuff out there alongside of someone else's and letting everyone else kind of like show their work or show their art, put their music on, like decorate a space, even just like suggest things like, hey, what about next week we go, I don't know, play golf. But look, they're all valid suggestions, and it's the thing about saying like, well, sure, maybe we go down to the driving range. I don't know, I shouldn't have picked golf. I don't know anything about golf. This was from a little show we did at the office called Extended Play. You don't have to name your shows, by the way. That's just a wanky thing I did. But it was like an unconference. So we had just whoever rocked up, grab a sticky note, write what your talk's about, and chuck it up there, and anyone could get up and talk. We had like a 14-year-old boy sit up there and talk about Pokemon, probably, and it was just a way to be like, it doesn't matter. Anyone can get up and say what they want. It's a very good format that I learned from Li Shanglun over here. But that just the ethos of saying, mikasa sukasa kind of thing is very important. And then it's just like, besides letting people come up there, make sure that they feel empowered to call it home. And I know this is sort of veering into more like, a festival and events and stuff, but it is really this kind of, it goes back to any kind of community outreach. And it can even just be when you are literally talking to your Discord. It's the same sort of principles. You have to put your host hat on. And like, as far as, a lot of people sort of go, oh, you ran a bar and all these events and stuff. You must be a real, outgoing person. And I'm like, fuck no. I hate, no, I don't hate people. I love people. But I love my own space. I love being, in a room with just no one else. I don't need anything. Just give me some space. But like but when you do it, when you say, yeah, I'm putting on an event, you put people in first, and you empathize with everyone who walks through the door, and you just, you just put your human hat on. And it's not like, it's nothing hard really, but it trains you so much this whole week. But I think like it's something that we all kind of understand. And we all have to kind of be as we come back into physical events after the pandemic and everything, I've seen people sort of re-understand, relearn that like, oh great, I'm in a physical space and I can't say that kind of thing, or I have to actually understand the viewpoint of the people I'm speaking to. All these wild things that we took for granted. But yeah, it's a two-way street, accept help. This last little picture is the bathroom in the bar, which if anyone was lucky enough to get there, or unlucky enough, depending on how they went, people would come to the bathroom and they'd be like, this graffiti's great. And I would pull out some pens and be like, do you want to add some? Because it's, if you say no to someone and don't do that, then you're going to get negative graffiti. But if you say, here you go, put yourself out there, and then you get a really, really good graffiti. Really empowering and like surprisingly emotional graffiti. Not the lizards are weird one, that's Grace, Brock's not being weird. But lots of the stuff in there is, a really interesting time capsule. And every so often I go back and look at the photos of my bar toilet and tear up a bit and think, yeah. You have to treat everyone as just people. And I know it sounds like a ridiculous thing to say, but it's so true. So yes, thanks for listening. And I've got some like resources stuff if you're curious about more things. I've written some guides, which is basically what I just told you, but written down. Be nice, kind of thing. But you're more than welcome to go have a look, or hit me up anytime. And again, if you are looking at like doing any events or any community stuff, and you just like need someone to bounce anything off, always feel free to email me. I'm more than happy to persuade or dissuade, as the case may be. And yeah, thanks so much, and have a lovely evening.